Hey, what's up, everyone? It's George from CryptoPotato, and today we're joined by Michael Shaulov, the CEO and co-founder of Fireblocks. Fireblocks is one of the largest providers of custody infrastructure in the cryptocurrency industry. In today's episode, we chat about the company's journey to reaching a whopping valuation of $8 billion from the very beginning until today. We also talk about some of the biggest security challenges for the industry and how Fireblocks is helping to address them, as well as what are their plans for the future. Of course, we also discussed the current market downturn. As you know, Bitcoin dropped below $20,000 for the first time in years, which meant that many companies found themselves in a position where they needed to cut staff. Shaulov tells us how Fireblocks is positioned to tackle the current market downturn, as well as what are his visions for the future. As always, if you enjoy our content, please make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button with the notification bell so you don't miss on any new videos coming in the future. First of all, Michael, hello, and thank you so much for agreeing to do this. I'm looking forward to this conversation for quite some time now.
George, thanks for having me.
So let's just dive right into it and kick it off with you explaining what is it that Fireblocks do exactly. Like, we've all heard of Fireblocks, but maybe you can explain in layman's term, what is it that you guys do?
Sure. We basically provide the infrastructure for the vast majority of the institutional market in crypto. So what does it mean, infrastructure? We basically do a couple of things. The first thing is that we provide a secure custody technology, or basically wallet technology for our clients, to allow them to store the cost of the coins or the assets that they have in a very secure and robust way, but with really high grade of accessibility. And the second thing that we have is basically the Fireblocks network that allows them to transfer those assets between them on chain, but basically by removing all the annoying parts of copy pasting addresses and all the operational challenges that inherently make it cumbersome and insecure. And the last thing is essentially a lot of capabilities around smart contract and DeFi management and Web3. So this is a recent push that we've done, or should I say basically a push that we're doing over the last year and a half. We became sort of the gateway for institutional access to DeFi, and clearly expanded that to anything around tokenization and Web3 in general. A lot of institutions that are working with NFTs are basically using our infrastructure to do it securely and at scale.
Right. And as the CEO, you surely have a lot on your shoulders when dealing with security. Can you perhaps share some of the best practices that you guys employ to help your clients secure their funds?
Yeah, sure. So clearly, our platform is really designed for securing our clients and funds, and it has basically a couple of sort of pillars, right? The first one is really to make sure that our clients are implementing our platform in the best way possible and helping them. And the second part is basically making sure that our infrastructure is secure as we develop it. And then the third one is making sure that we are secure in our day-to-day operations, right? So if we start from the first aspect, is that the Fireblocks platform is really designed under a concept of what we call defense in depth, right? Or multi-layer security, which means that the way we think about the problem is that there is no sort of like, silver bullet, right? In how you secure a system, and you basically need to have multiple layers that will protect the system in the case that one of them will fall, right? The way that it's actually being delivered to our clients is through a combination of a couple of technologies. The first one is what we call MPC, or multi-party computation. In a nutshell, it's basically a very similar concept to multisig, or the fact that you need to have a threshold of parties to sign a transaction. And inherently, the key is basically, in most cases, is basically being split between Fireblocks and the client. And also in the client, it usually requires multiple people to approve the transaction because we essentially architected a very robust approval policy engine, right? That allows the client to decide what are the workflows in terms of how he approves certain transactions. So this is sort of like, the layer one, right? Of how you're making sure that there is no collusion internally, but also if you have a hacker that was able to compromise one individual within the client, or even if that hacker was able to compromise Fireblocks, it doesn't have the keys for the entire kingdom, right? Not everything falls in one at once. The second layer is actually that all of this is basically being protected through hardware security. So we are the only player that is currently using a combination of both MPC and hardware security that is operated at scale through both cloud technologies and mobile technologies. That's basically the second layer that we use for our clients, right? And then, when we develop our product, really, we put a lot of emphasis around the threat analysis, understand how hackers behave in the space, and making sure that as we decide which components are being developed inside of hardware security or trusted execution, as we call it, we're doing all that kind of modeling. We invest a lot in cryptography innovation to basically bring new models. So, for example, the most groundbreaking protocol for secure multi-party computation was developed by Fireblocks. It's called MPC CMP. And then lastly, we put a lot of money. We put high 7-digit on an annual basis in terms of just securing our infrastructure through a security operations center, a lot of systems and tools that we have surrounding our infrastructure, and doing continuous monitoring for what we're doing internally, what happens in the perimeter of our company, and so on.
Right. So just to clarify, not only does your infrastructure help prevent outsiders from breaching in, but it also protects your clients from insiders who might get compromised.
Yeah. So just like a very well-known rule of thumb in cybersecurity is that 50% of the hacks are actually insider job, right? Surprising or not surprising it may sound, right? Yeah. So one of the key things that we have had to develop, both from, I would say, practical reasons, and also to help with the compliance of our clients, is really this kind of anti-collusion type of capability to protect from one insider or even multiple insiders from being able to run away with all the funds. And this is really being done by disintermediating this kind of single point of failure or single point of compromise through both MPC and the workflow engines that doesn't allow any one specific employee in the company to unilaterally move the funds without getting multiple approvers, right? And we do work with our clients with documentation and information in terms of how they can set it up. But honestly, once you understand the concept, it's not very, very complicated to come with rules and policies that work well for your organization. Right. It's just sort of a trade-off of what is your average activity per transaction per day, how many people can practically be involved, if people are traveling, are you going to block yourself because someone is going to be on a plane and you need some redundancy? You factor all those things and you basically build a workflow.
Right. Okay, let me take you back a little bit. You co-founded Fireblocks with two other people, right? Idan and Pavel. Can you perhaps tell us how it was back in the early days compared to how it is right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think in my view, the company haven't changed a lot, although it did grow from 3 or 10 people as we've been in the beginning when we launched the first product to about 500 people at this point in time. But we are very much of a technology company, right? And we do rely heavily on bringing the best people on the technical and engineering and product part on board. We also, I think, benefited significantly for bringing people from the financial markets on board. For example, our VP of Financial Services and APAC, Steven, who joined us fairly quickly after we started. So we have a very unique blend in terms of both very deep cybersecurity and technical capabilities and so on. I would say, like, the operational rhythm have changed, right? When we first launched the product, within the first year, we had something around 30 clients, and now we have over 1,300 clients. So a lot of the work we're putting in place is really to support our clients from scalability standpoint, continuously trying to improve our support, right? It's actually always a challenge because of the growth that is happening in the space. And it's probably most of the people in the space have seen for themselves. You can't really find talent that is already know how to do it. So you need to bring from outside, from adjacent industry, train them, in our case, in a very technical product for them to be effective. So this is something we're putting a lot of emphasis right now to make it much more intuitive, scalable product for our clients. But we still continuously pushing on the innovation, which is very, very important for us. And we view this from the, I think, like, from the early days as we started Fireblocks to right now, focusing on innovation, focusing on helping our clients to grow the business.
What do you think is one of the challenge in front of the industry in terms of innovations? Well, what is theirs that we still have to find out how to do better than we're doing it right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are a couple of maybe, like, I'll split it into like 3 pillars, right? The first one is probably something that is quite obvious. It's actually less in the area that Fireblocks is really activated. It's just like the scalability from a transaction throughput, right? For different blockchains. I don't think that it's actually a limiting factor right now, but actually a good segue to the most important thing, I believe. It's actually going to be challenged as we hopefully move into more and more real world use cases, right? I think that the main challenge right now, and it's probably the most timely challenge given everything that is going on in the industry in the last in the last couple of weeks, right, is to really find and power the real world use cases, right? I mean, the industry has been focused for the vast majority of the time on the, say, like, trading cryptocurrency use case. But as we all know, outside of Bitcoin, right, the value of Ethereum, the value of Solana is the question of how this will actually be used for real world use cases. Will it be used for payments? Will it be used for tokenized assets? Will, when people do, when someone ships a sofa from, port in China to the United States, are they going to use trade finance that is running on a blockchain? And we're starting to see some of those use cases emerging, right? There was a couple of days ago, there was an announcement of actually 3 different customers of ours that have settled. It was a ANZ, Zero Cap, and another carbon credit issuing company in Australia, that they actually did a transaction of selling carbon credits with a regulated stablecoin, right? Which is pretty impressive and real world use case. But we need to see more and more of those across everything, rather than focusing on use cases that are crypto, like basically like crypto trading use cases, because, and it's not easy, right? Because here you actually need to go and transform existing industries through innovation. That a lot of it is actually business innovation, right? It's not necessarily only a technology innovation. And, we are, generally speaking, looking forward to partner with as many entrepreneurs, startups, and players that are really tackling this big problem.
Right. Okay. And Fireblocks managed to grow relatively quickly. In just a few years, your guys are now worth over 8 billion following your last funding round. Did you imagine? I mean, of course, you hope for certain, like, this kind of growth because, it's logical. But did you imagine things will move so quickly and the way they did?
The short answer is no, but yeah, I don't think we imagine it will grow that quickly. To be honest, also the last 18 months or so were just kind of very unexpected and occasionally, like, even unplanned growth,
Yeah,
right, for us. But I think what really happened is that we managed to really build a product that has an exceptional product market fit for where the market was heading and is heading, right? A really funny story I have is that when we actually started, right, people were telling me that the idea is dumb and stupid, right? And people would continue to use cold storage, and why do we even bothering focusing on hot storage problem and focusing on the transfer problem, things like that. In my mind, and that goes to what I basically was saying earlier, is that when people talk about the internet of money, right, and when people talk about the fact that cryptocurrencies and digital asset has this unbelievable potential of revolutionizing finance,
right,
revolution, all those things, it was very clear for us from the beginning that you need to build an infrastructure that is suited for on-chain, right? And at some point, we basically were left almost alone with this kind of unique capability to serve clients on-chain at scale in a pretty broad set of use cases that were, whether it's like P2P, tokenization of stable coins, NFTs, DeFi access. We were the only one to do it. So inevitably, and we also have this kind of mentality of continuing pushing on the innovation as much as we can. So inevitably, the company grew very, very quickly to basically meet the demand. Yeah, so it's not that we were expecting this kind of growth, but we are happy that we are able to deliver something that is valuable.
and fast forward to current days, we can see that this year is so far is shaping up to be rather bearish, so to speak, in terms of market performance. And this is interesting because it also brings out some issues that companies are facing, right? So, for example, some companies have been hiring way too aggressively during the bull cycle, whereas others perhaps weren't hiring as aggressively as they should. And now we are seeing this aftermath where companies have to let people go, whereas others are positioned in a way where they're currently able to expand their team. How is Fireblocks coping with all this?
Yeah, so the reality is that although on paper it looks like we grew very quickly, we were still fairly understaffed, right? So at the point that the market started to go to basically, I don't know if it's bearish, right? But we did see the last set of incidents, both from Luna and as of recent, the entire deleveraging in the market from Celsius,
Right.
3 Arrows, and so on. Is definitely impacting our client base, right, and the continuous expansion in the market. There are a couple of things that I don't think are going to significantly change for us, right? First, we are still hiring on the R&D side. The slowdown in the market actually allows us to focus more resources internally to make us more efficient and more and to fix a lot of the things that we were unable to fix when we were trying just to meet the demand of our clients, right? So we're putting a lot of our engineering resources around stabilization, customer support, all those things that just require time, but you can't really do them when the market is moving extremely quickly and you need to support a new blockchain every every week or something like that. So I think now things are relaxing a bit and we can do that. Also, to some of our advantages that, in terms of our client base, we are somewhat diversified, right? We are not only focused, all the people that I actually mentioned, both Celsius and 3 Arrows and Voyager and so on, they are our clients, right? So it's not that we are feeling for them, and I don't believe that it's actually a good thing for the industry or us specifically, but keep in mind that Fireblocks is actually quite diversified from use cases and markets, right? So on one hand, we have banks that are using us and our customers. They're not a big, I mean, a lot of people think that Fireblocks mostly works with banks. It's actually a very small part of our business, somewhere probably less than 3 or 4%, but we have a diversification over there, and we see a lot of new activity in that segment. And generally speaking, they're less impacted by this kind of market volatility because their projects are much more long-term. And also a lot of them are actually working on much more of the real world use cases, right? Whether those are stable coins or tokenized securities or tokenized assets. On the other hand, we've been working with a lot of Web3 companies, right? So whether those are gaming companies, NFT marketplaces, and a lot of use cases in that category, which again are not really impacted by the bearish market of where the price of Bitcoin is. And we see a lot of innovation, we see a lot of companies building in that space, and really we are putting a lot of effort into both supporting them and also sort of bridging our existing client base or bridging our traditional client base, which are more like, the crypto trading firms, into that segment, because we believe that they are going to be an important market they're going to be an important part of the market structure around those kind of stuff. So this is at least like, how we are currently thinking about the effort. I don't necessarily think that when we look at some of those companies that are doing layoffs, I don't necessarily think that it's a bad thing. You don't see people laying off 80% of their people or something like that. What you tend to see is people doing somewhere between 10 to 30% reduction, which just basically means that they are doing some level of internal optimization. And there is actually a lot of sort of research around, I would say, how to run a business that in every given point, if you're reducing 10% of your workforce, you're actually able to run faster, right? Like the Buffalo effect.
And you mentioned Web3. How do you think Fireblocks is positioned to tackle this ongoing trend of Web3?
Yeah, so this is, I think, like the area that we're putting a lot of strategic effort into. We have a team that on the engineering product side is only doing Web3. We have also people on the go-to-market side that are solely focused on Web3. We see a couple of first of all, Web3 is actually a pretty broad category that has multiple use cases built in, right? I think that the father or the grandfather of
Right.
Web3 is basically DeFi, right? And on the DeFi side, we sort of created a very unique set of capabilities, right, for people to both have wallets to securely interact with DeFi and smart contracts at scale, and that basically translates to some of our capabilities around Web3. We also have support for NFTs. We have been doing it from a very early days in terms of connectivity, using both Wallet Connect, browser extension, API, and so on, into NFTs, into the different marketplaces, and so on. And then it basically expands to gaming companies that are looking to do things in this space. It expands to media companies and digital media companies and Web2 companies that are looking to do things in this space. They all need a wallet. They all need secure infrastructure around the wallet. Usually Web3 is is related to having access for a really mass retail client base, right? Because it's really a technology designed for retail. And Fireblocks is right now the only one that was really able to deliver this kind of mass experience. We're currently running, let's say, somewhere between 60 to 100 million unique addresses for clients that they can operate with, doing about 3 million on-chain transactions per month, right? So supporting over 30 different blockchains. A lot of them are blockchains that are purely optimized for Web3, whether it's Polygon or Avalanche, or layer 2s like Arbitrum and so on, or Ronin, another blockchain that we are supporting. So this entire structure really allows our clients to enter Web3 in a secure and scalable way.
And do you see, speaking of all these different blockchains that are optimized for supporting different applications, do you see a future where there is perhaps one very dominant chain like Ethereum, or do you see a multi-chain future?
So I do think that my personal view is that they're likely to be, if I had to put bets at this point in time, I would bet I will overweight an EVM future. Okay, the reason for that is if you look at the history of technology broadly, it might be very similar to the operating system wars in the 80s and the 90s. And eventually we know that what emerged from it is sort of like, Windows and Linux, right? Those are the two main flavors. And the main reasons for that is that at some point there is a critical mass of developers that come to a certain platform. There is also in Web3 and DeFi and smart contracts, there is also the notion of composability, right? That there is some kind of level of network effect, right, between the developers. So I don't necessarily know if it's going to be only Ethereum or Ethereum with Avalanche and Polygon and all those layer 2s. I definitely think that this is a feasibility over there. But at least right now, it seems to be that there is a critical mass of developers that are familiar with how to write into that stack.
And how do you see, to wrap it up, how do you see Fireblocks in, let's say, 10 years from now? I know it's like a longer term period, but
yeah, it's like, in crypto, it's basically like asking, how do you see yourself in 70 years from now, right?
Exactly.
But I think that we want to basically enable every business that is going to adopt digital assets and cryptocurrencies to do it in a secure and efficient way, right? That will require us to continue and play the role of this kind of critical infrastructure for this world. I think that there is a lot of, given the fact that we are talking about value and money over here, security will continue to be paramount, right? We need to continue and evolve our platform to continue to be like, security is not a static point in time, right? It's actually much more of a mouse and cat game, right? So we need to continue to evolve it. And there are a lot of things that we are planning to do, which really simplifies interactions for our clients from a backend infrastructure, and also bringing to them a lot of capabilities that they will need around compliance, regulations and things like that that are definitely coming.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for this. It's been a blast. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Sure. Thanks so much for doing that and inviting me for the podcast.